Hey guys, Pokemon Collectibles here, and welcome to a new series that I decided to start. I guess I'm going to call it Deck Assessments because I play Pokemon TCG and I really love playing that game, so I thought I would give you guys some advice and show you guys the best decks to use and a lot of things about them. Hopefully some helpful advice. Hopefully it's something that you can actually take away from this video and go play Pokemon TCG online yourself and have a little bit of knowledge about these decks and know how they work and how to use them to your advantage. But I hope you guys enjoy this series. It's probably going to be a series that I do either every Monday, every Wednesday, or every Friday because that's going to be my new schedule now. I'm going to do videos every week instead of just every other week because I feel like that's more consistent and so that I don't spam you guys every other week with 5 or 6 videos. So I think this will work out pretty well. Let me know in the comments below if you like this series once you watch this video and give me some positive feedback hopefully, or negative feedback if you didn't like it. Either way, let's get into this deck. We're starting this series with a deck called Mental Might. It's actually my favorite deck and a deck that is really overpowered, as you guys will see later on in this video. The cover is purple and it says Mental Might. It has Gallade, Swoobat, and Miltank, which are 3 really big characters in this little pack here. So I'm going to be going over this deck and probably a few more later on. Number 1. Main objective / thing to accomplish for this deck. The main objective in this deck, in my opinion, which all these will be just my opinion, you guys can correct me if I make some mistakes about these decks, or you can agree with me, or say you like my opinion, or change it in some way, whatever. But the main objective to me is the focus of 2 cards. There's Gallade, which evolves from Kirlia, which evolves from Ralts, and then there is Miltank. Now, in this deck, if I remember right, there are 4 Ralts, 3 Kirlia, and only 2 Gallade. So if you can't find those 2 Gallade, you're kinda stuck with Miltank. But Miltank is a pretty good card. It has Hammer In if you can't get Gallade on your bench. Hammer In does 60 damage. But if you can get a Gallade, and I really wish this stacked if you had 2 Gallade on your bench, but you can use Powerful Friends. If you have any stage 2 Pokemon on your bench, this attack does 70 more damage. Now that allows Miltank to do 80 damage. And I say you should pair this with Gallade because it's actually the only stage 2 in this deck. So you have to get Gallade out in order to accomplish this. But if you can't find Miltank and you still want to do a lot of damage, Gallade's first move is actually its most powerful and it only takes 2 energy. It's called Powerful Storm. Does 20 damage times the amount of energy attached to all of your Pokemon. Now I misread this the first time I played with this deck. I actually thought it meant it just goes by the energy that's on this particular Gallade, but it's actually a combination of all your energies. So if you have 2 energies on Gallade and say you put, I don't know, 3 on Miltank, 2 on another Miltank, 1 on a Swoobat or something like that, then it's all of those energies combined times 20. Now that's a devastating attack, especially if you're going against a Psychic type Pokemon, because usually they're weak against Psychic type. This Gallade is a Psychic type, so if you're going against one that's also weak against Psychic type, it does a lot of damage. I've actually done about 600 damage with that card before, just because I had so many energies, but your opponent switches the defending Pokemon with one of his or her bench Pokemon. Now that does 80 damage, the same as Miltank's Powerful Friends thing. So either way, you can do 80 damage plus if you can get Gallade and Miltank out. Like I said, main objective for this deck is to get out Gallade and have Miltank as your first defense. Use Miltank to do 80 damage, which takes out quite a few Pokemon actually. That'll actually one-hit quite a few Pokemon. And then once Miltank is taken down by your opponent, which inevitably will happen because, let's face it, I mean, this only has 100 HP, so yeah, it'll eventually be taken down unless you can end the battle quickly. And then there is Gallade, which would be your backup, but enough droning about this. That's my opinion, that the main objective is to get Gallade and Miltank out. That's your 2 superstars. Number 2. Main cards and their functions. Now, besides the two cards that I just went over, Galade and Miltank, and Galade's previous evolutions, there is a few more cards that actually do contribute to your deck. One doesn't seem all that great at first, but it really helps you in the long run. It is a Hoot Hoot card. Now, Hoot Hoot has the ability called Dual Draw, where each player draws two cards. Now, that's you and your opponent. So keep that in mind. If your opponent seems to be getting some really good draws, maybe not use it. But if you get in a desperate enough situation, it really helps quite a bit, actually. Then there's Roller Skates, which is also a really cool card. You flip a coin, and if you get a heads, then you draw 3 cards. Now, this one is all up to chance. It's 50-50 whether you'll draw 3 cards or not. I've had situations where I've tried to use 2 of these in a row and got tails on both. I've got situations before where I've used 2 in a row and gotten heads on both. So it really is to chance, but it's a really good card. It'll help you draw 6 cards, which is really helpful if you don't have anything good in your hand. Then there's Escape Rope, which is also in this deck. Very good card. It allows you to swap out a Pokemon for your active Pokemon. And if your active one is taking a lot of damage and you have another one that you can send out that also has full energy, really amazing card. Evo Soda would be my next pick for this. Evo Soda allows you to evolve one of your Pokemon, either your active or one on your bench, but it goes straight on to the Pokemon though. So make sure you really want to evolve it then. And I can go into situations where you don't want to evolve later on, but always use it on a Pokemon that you want to evolve right then. Evo Soda is a really good card. Then you have Tierno, which is kind of like Rollerblades, except it's guaranteed. You always draw 3 cards with this card. It's a supporter though, so you can only use it once per turn. Pokemon Fan Club is one that I use quite often with this. It allows you to search your deck for 2 basic Pokemon and put those on your bench. Really, really helpful there. Especially with this deck, I highly recommend you get Galade's evolutions out, mainly Ralts and maybe a Miltank. That's usually what I draw, is Ralts and Miltank, so that you can have your 2 basics that you can start setting them up, put 1 energy on Miltank, and you know the rest from previous. Pokemon Center Lady is another really good one. You heal 60 damage from one of your Pokemon, and it removes all special conditions. So if your Pokemon's asleep, paralyzed, whatever, it will cure it of that. Then there's Hard Charm, which I also use quite often. Any damage done to this Pokemon this card is attached to by an opponent's attack is reduced by 20. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that is really helpful. Like, that has gotten me out of some really bad spots before where my Pokemon will take less damage per hit. Really, really helpful. Now, that's all the item cards that are really good, and 1 Pokemon. As far as the other Pokemon in this, Furfrou is really good. It's a really good card to start out with. The only thing is it takes 2 energy to do anything, but it is a move called Tight Jaw, which says flip a coin. If heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. Now, that's quite useful, especially considering you have 50-50 shot every time you use it to paralyze your opponent's Pokemon, so it could happen every time or none at all. So if you want to chance it and see if you can make something happen, really good card. But that's all the main ones for this deck. Number 4, my favorite card from this deck. Now, I'm not going to talk a lot about this card, but my favorite card of this deck is probably Galade, mostly because it's the superstar of this deck, including Miltank, which would probably be my second favorite. But Galade is definitely my favorite because it is this deck. Without it, this deck would pretty much suck. Number 5. The not so important cards / cards that don't really matter if you draw them or not. It's kind of hard to decide with this deck in particular because all the cards in a deck can be arguably usable in some way, but there are a few in this deck that if you don't draw them, it's not the end of the world really, and sometimes if you draw too many of these, it's actually gonna hurt you rather than help you. The number 1 card is probably Golett because it's a really good card, don't get me wrong, it can do 10 damage and 50 damage, but it takes 3 energy to do any significant damage, and 1 energy will only get you a 10 damage attack, plus only 2 energy will give you a 10 damage attack. So it takes 3 turns to get this up and going and be able to do 50 damage. And if you'll look at the card closely, it has no special effects. Like, you can't, flip a coin and do 20 more damage or anything like that. So Golett is probably the first card that I would say is the least useful. The other 2 would probably be Skitty and Delcatty, just because these cards aren't all that great great. Skitty's not too bad if you just want to do a little bit of damage. You can either heal 10 damage or do 10 damage. And then Delcatty does have Fake Out, which is not bad. You put 2 energy on it, you do 30 damage, and you have the possibility to paralyze your opponent, but it's still not that great. Besides that, I actually forgot to cover Professor's Letter that lets you draw 2 basic energy. Sorry, it's in the wrong section, but that was actually a pretty useful card. And besides that, that's really about it. That's about all the cards that are bad. So this is overall a really good deck. Like, the majority of the cards that you draw will actually be very useful to you. So this is a really good deck. I really like it a lot. Number 6. Which deck this deck is more effective against, and which one it will probably lose against. Now this deck, I'm sure you guys have seen so far, is a Psychic and a few Normals deck. So this one is actually really good against other Psychic types because there's quite a few Psychic cards out there that are really effective against other Psychic types. And there's also Fighting type, which apparently is very weak to Psychic attacks. I would say that the best deck for this one to go against, as far as TCG Online goes, it's called Basic Orange. Now that one seems to be all fighting cards, so there are a few cards in here that are actually weak against grass type and a few that are weak against water type, but for the most part they're pretty weak against psychic type. Number 7, in conclusion, and my rating from 1 to 10. In conclusion, for this Mental Might deck here, I'd say it is one of my favorites, just because Galade is such a powerhouse. It's one of my favorite cards, probably in all of the decks. Now that is as of recording this right now. Now when I start going through these decks and assessing them probably once a month, I may encounter one that is better than this one, but as of right now, my rating for this is 10 out of 10, just because it's my favorite. So like I said, that could change later on. My rating for this deck may change also when I find a deck that I like better, but as of now it's a 10. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little series here. It will probably, like I said, be once a month, so look forward to that. If you guys enjoy this, please give it a like and make sure you click that bell icon on my channel to get notified for when I upload my crazy content. Thanks guys for watching and have an awesome day.